Today, we will undertake a detailed examination of fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. Our focus will be on understanding how these concepts function as vitiating factors of consent under the Indian Contract Act of 1872. Our lecture is structured into 6 distinct sections. We will begin with the foundations of vitiating factors. We will then proceed to deconstruct fraud under Section 17, followed by an analysis of misrepresentation under Section 18. Thereafter, we will explore the principle of mistake. We will then synthesize this knowledge into a consent analysis framework, concluding with a quick revision section for examination purposes. Let us commence with our first section, Foundations of Vitiating Factors. Here, we will identify the topic and its relevant statutory provisions. The topic for our study is fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. The primary statute governing these principles is the Indian Contract Act 1872. The relevant provisions that we will be examining are Sections 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, which fall under Unit 2 of the syllabus. We will now turn our attention to the second section, where we will deconstruct the concept of fraud as defined in Section 17 of the Act. We shall analyze the statutory definition and its essential components. Let us read the statutory provision. Section 17. Fraud defined. Fraud means and includes any of the following acts committed by a party to a contract, or with his connivance, or by his agent, with intent to deceive another party thereto, or his agent, or to induce him to enter into the contract. 1. The suggestion as a fact of that which is not true by one who does not believe it to be true. 2. The active concealment of a fact by one having knowledge or belief of the fact. 3. A promise made without any intention of performing it. 4. Any other act fitted to deceive. 5. Any such act or omission as the law specially declares to be fraudulent. From this definition, we can distill 4 essential requirements to establish fraud. First, there must be a representation of a false fact. Second, the person making the representation must have knowledge of its falsity. Third, there must be a clear intent to deceive. And fourth, the other party must have been actually induced by this representation to enter into the contract. Now, let us consider the role of silence in this scenario. A says to B, "If you do not deny it, I shall assume the horse is sound." B stays silent. If the horse is in fact unsound, B's silence is tantamount to speech and thereby constitutes fraud. We will now examine the landmark case of Dairy versus Peak from 1889. A company prospectus suggested it had the right to use steam power, a belief the directors held honestly but which was later denied. The legal issue was whether a false statement, made with an honest belief in its truth, constitutes fraud. The House of Lords held that it does not. The ratio established that fraud is proven only when a false representation is made knowingly, without belief in its truth, or recklessly. Consequently, the directors were found not liable for fraud. This case is pivotal as it demarcates fraud from innocent misrepresentation. Having discussed the intentional act of fraud, we now transition to our third section, defining misrepresentation, as provided in Section 18. This section deals with innocent false statements and breaches of duty. Let us review the statutory text. Section 18. Misrepresentation defined. Misrepresentation means and includes 1. The positive assertion in a manner not warranted by the information of the person making it, of that which is not true, though he believes it to be true. 2. Any breach of duty which, without an intent to deceive, gains an advantage to the person committing it, or anyone claiming under him, by misleading another to his prejudice, or to the prejudice of anyone claiming under him. 3. Causing, however innocently, a party to an agreement to make a mistake as to the substance of the thing which is the subject of the agreement. Consider this practical scenario. A seller claims a factory makes 500 units based on old data. The seller is unaware that current production has fallen to 400 units. This act is not an intentional deception, but rather an innocent false statement based on outdated information. This constitutes misrepresentation. The core distinction between fraud and misrepresentation, therefore, lies in the element of intent. Fraud is an intentional false statement made with the purpose to deceive. Misrepresentation, in contrast, is a false statement made innocently, without any intention to deceive the other party. A guiding principle in this area is the legal maxim Caveat Emptor, which translates to "let the buyer beware." This principle places the onus on the buyer to perform due diligence. It is why mere silence is generally not considered fraud. However, as established by the explanation to Section 17, Exceptions exist where there is a duty to speak or where silence itself is equivalent to speech. We have now addressed both intentional and unintentional false statements. We will proceed to our fourth section, the principle of mistake. Our examination will cover sections 20 to 22, focusing on mistake of fact and mistake of law. Let us read the relevant statutory texts. Section 20 states, where both the parties to an agreement are under a mistake as to a matter of fact essential to the agreement is void. Section 21 addresses the effect of mistakes as to law. A contract is not voidable because it was caused by a mistake as to any law in force in India, but a mistake as to a law not in force in India has the same effect as a mistake of fact. It is crucial to note that a mistake of foreign law is treated as a mistake of fact, rendering the agreement void. The case of Kunde v. Lindsay from 1878 provides a classic illustration of mistake. In this case, a rogue named Blankarn placed an order with Lindsay by imitating the name of a reputable firm, Blankarin & Co. Lindsay dispatched the goods, believing they were contracting with Blankarin. The issue was whether a valid contract existed. The court's ratio was that there was no consensus ad idem, or meeting of the minds. Lindsay's intention was to contract with Blankarin, not Blankarin. Therefore, the court decided that the contract was void ab initio, or void from the beginning. To consolidate these principles, we will now introduce the consent analysis framework in our fifth section. This can be conceptualized as a vitiation filter, providing a logical step-by-step approach to assessing the validity of a contract. This framework operates as follows. Step 1. Is the consent free under Section 14? Step 2. If consent is affected by fraud or misrepresentation, the contract is voidable at the option of the aggrieved party. Step 3. If there is a mutual mistake of fact essential to the agreement, the contract is void. Step 4. Similarly, if there is a mistake of foreign law, the contract is void. Step 5. However, in the case of a unilateral mistake, the contract is generally held to be valid. This brings us to our sixth and final section, Examination Quick Revision. The purpose here is to summarize the key takeaways and provide recall aids for sections 17 to 22. In summary, fraud under Section 17 requires an intent to deceive, with Derry v. Peake as the landmark authority. Misrepresentation under Section 18 involves an innocent false statement. A mutual mistake of fact under Section 20 renders a contract void. A mistake as to Indian law under Section 21 does not, but a mistake of foreign law does. A unilateral mistake under Section 22 generally does not invalidate a contract. As a final recall aid, remember this distinction. Fraud is faulty intent. Misrepresentation is mistaken truth. This concludes our lecture. I trust this detailed explanation will prove beneficial in your examinations.